There is no doubt, in the past couple of weeks, you have seen the true cost of what Brexit has done to this country, almost denying its soft power and the realities that many Brexiteers thought that they could somehow, as we've said before, metaphorically just pull up the anchor of the UK after Brexit and just go sailing off into the Atlantic or Pacific and just ignore the EU as if it just doesn't exist anymore is now complete folly. Complete and well and truly utter folly. The idea that we were going to be this new, dynamic, nimble power, the whole Ukraine situation has completely shown how weak our position really is. We cannot do defense without Europe. We cannot perform sanctions properly without Europe. There's cannot perform even basic energy security without the need for the European Union and getting involved with the European Union, because you need a European-wide solution. Britain is a part of Europe. Like it or not, we are here to stay. And yes, there are people out there who come to our channel and say, oh, we don't want Britain back. No, you want Britain back because a Britain inside the European Union strengthens the hand of the EU. It just flat out basically does. It improves your market. It improves your legal and security services, because at the moment we've got some of the best in the world. Again, there are huge advantages for us being part of back in the European Union and us having, again, back at the seat of the table, which are now a lot of the Conservative MPs who backed Brexit are suddenly realizing, why aren't we at the front of the table in the seat of all this? Why has Biden passed us over and instead gone to talk to the EU and not us? Again, this goes to show you how weak-handed the Brexiteers' hand really was in all this. So let's go diving into this article from the article saying how Brexit weakened the West. But before we do that, please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, the subscribe button if you are new to the channel, then welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel. So on with this from the article titled, How Brexit Weakened the West. The Ukraine war is a confrontation between Putin and the West. And we know what Putin is. But what is the West? It includes the nations of Western and now Central Europe, as well as the United States and Canada. But it also includes Australia, New Zealand, and the countries of the Southeast, such as Japan and South Korea. The West, then, is not a point on the compass, but a collection of viewpoints and principles, the belief in the rule of law, in the importance of cooperation, and most significantly, in the moderating power of international institutions. And those moderating institutions are particularly objectionable for despots such as Putin. Authoritarians do not like the idea of smaller nations coalescing into groups. Not only does a group pose more of a challenge to a monolithic big bully state, such as Putin's Russia, it also suggests something about the subversive to the entire despotic worldview, that the lone nation state doesn't cut it anymore, and no matter how big and powerful you are, you still need alliances. And that's the lesson of NATO, the West's greatest military alliance. It's also why Putin hates NATO so much. Not only is it the entity that won the Cold War and dumped Putin and his colleagues at the KGB family on the losing side of history, it also offered a lesson in the power of alliances. But also, a power hoarder like Putin doesn't do alliances, not on equal terms at least. Aggressive despots like him need the political atmosphere that combines the heroic national self-determination with a sense of embittered victimhood. The conciliatory diplomatic activity required to reach agreements with foreign states would not pop that paranoid bubble. Which makes the European Union a huge group of countries joined in an agreement especially antagonizing for a grim nationalist like Putin. With its trade agreements, free movement of people, and open societies, it represents everything that he is against. And it is notable that immediately after the invasion started, Ukraine applied to join the EU. It is also notable that 3 EU heads of state, the Slovenian, Polish, and Czech leaders, announced plans to travel to Kiev with talks with President Zelensky. And the three of them agreed to this while the city was being attacked by Russian forces, and it was an extraordinary act of bravery. The EU is now the political Western bloc that immediately is now confronting Putin. The war is pressing on its borders, and the Russian missile strikes have landed dangerously close to the Ukraine-Polish line. The EU is taking in almost all the refugees who are currently escaping this war zone. And institutions such as the EU and NATO, along with others, including the World Bank and the UN, are the central pillars of the West. To be part of the West is to accept the idea that international institutions and strengthen on the values on which Western society and culture are based. That is why President Zelensky is so urgently seeking EU membership. He sees perhaps more clearly than any other world leader the power of the transnational institution and the protection that it affords. Putin also recognizes the EU power, but in the negative. That's why his negotiators insist that before any ceasefire can be agreed, Ukraine must give up its ambitions to join not only NATO, but also the EU. Other world leaders have also been more naive when it comes to the EU's strategic importance. In a speech given in 2016, Boris Johnson blamed Russia's invasion and the annexation of Crimea in the 2014 not on Vladimir Putin, but on the EU itself. If you want an example of EU foreign policy making on the hoof, he said, then the EU's pretensions of running a defense policy that have caused real trouble. Look what happened in Ukraine. All the EU can do, in my view, is cause confusion, and that's not what we've seen in the Balkans. I'm afraid it's a tragic incident, and Ukraine, things went wrong as well. From these remarks, Johnson was accused of being a Putin apologist by Jack Straw, the former foreign secretary, and it's hard to disagree with that judgment. Now that Johnson, of course, with links with the Russian wealthy donors and several of his holidays with Elgi Levbed, some now have come to light, it is reasonable to ask now how the Prime Minister can hold such pro-Kremlin views. Of course, the point that British Europhobes, Johnson included, always missed was that the EU was created to end the threat of war in Europe and to make it the West's most single significant political institution. The guiding logic was that if nations could develop a shared economic and diplomatic interest, then they would stop trying to destroy one another. Twice during the 20th century, Western civilization was almost annihilated, and the EU project was meant to end all that. The idea that weakening the EU might undermine the continent's stability was put to Johnson back in 2016 during his campaign to leave the European Union. He did not accept the suggestion. Perhaps he did not understand it. In his view, his argument was little more than scare stories about World War III or bubonic plague or whatever. It seems those remarks have not aged well. This is Putin's war, and one day, unless circumstances intervene, he will answer for his crimes at The Hague. And yet, we cannot escape two conclusions. First, that a generation of British politicians campaigned to weaken the West's most important political institution in the immediate aftermath of a Russian annexation of Crimea. And second, that Vladimir Putin would have welcomed their success. So I think that puts it very, very clearly in stark contrast just how much Brexit really did not only essentially at some point really weaken the EU, even though now the Ukraine crisis, you could argue, has brought Europe together even more so. Even Britain has been forced to turn its head back to Europe. As I've said before, the whole idea of Brexit is completely a non-starter from the get-go. All its talk of how wonderful and amazing Britain was complete bogus and utter nonsense. Now, ultimately, I definitely recommend that we as a country definitely at least rejoin the single market and customs union as a potential start point for us to eventually rejoin with the rest of Europe. And remember, back in the 2016 referendum, the Leave campaign did say that a Norway-style Brexit deal of us not being in the EU but remaining in the single market and customs union was a perfectly good idea for Brexit. So why isn't that the case now? So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for tuning in and watching, and we'll see you all next time.